Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world to me. Thank you very, very, very much. And today we have someone slightly a little different today, but someone who has an impeccable podcast behind them and someone who has these incredibly open and raw conversations about everything that can happen in life. And that is the great Ellie McKay, host of her own podcast now called On a Mission 2.0. Let's take a moment to introduce Ellie for anyone who's not familiar. So Ellie is an entrepreneur, business tycoon, and podcaster, again, host of her own show, On a Mission 2.0. Her conversations are a deep dive into someone's story, a no-holds-barred experience that gets to know the person at their core and not just what lies on the surface. From ex-drug dealers turned investigators to survivors of some of the most horrific trafficking, healing from trauma, as well as how to rebuild your life, negotiating personal transformation, and how you can come back from rock bottom. Special mention to our episode with Sara Al Madani, former housewife of Dubai, turned spiritual healer, offering insights into what happens to your life when you put yourself first. I cannot recommend that episode enough, so go and check it out, guys. And like in the arts, we love a great story, and her guests and her give us that and so much more. And in her own words, her podcast is unfiltered, untamed, unmissable, real stories, raw truth, no holding back. So without further ado, hello, Ellie.
Hello, Oliver. Well, what a fantastic introduction. I must admit, I almost didn't recognize myself. So thank you very much, my friend.
No, it's all you, mate. It's all you. It's all your work up from there. It's great. So, where to start, really, Ellie? You've done so much with your life. You know, you've shared your own experience on so many other shows, but more on that a bit later. So, I suppose to start today, slightly differently, what's your story?
Oh, wow. I always think that's such a broad question, isn't it? Where do we start? I mean, how far back are we going here, Oliver? How long have we got? Because I love a good yarn. I love a good yarn.
Yeah, yarn away, mate. Yarn away.
Well, Ellie McKay, mother to three incredible, if not slightly feral children, and two dogs. Currently based in Doncaster, brought up in Scotland, as you can probably tell from the accent.
Yeah. Glasgow, right?
No. I was more East Coast. You're West Coast. I'm East Side, mate. I'm East Side.
I do apologise.
Yeah, well, it was actually a place called Linlithgow, which no one's really heard of, but it was actually the birthplace of Mary, Queen of Scots. Nice. It's about 15 minutes on the train to Edinburgh, about half an hour on the train to Glasgow for anyone who's not familiar with it. But growing up, it's that sort of place that there's just absolutely nothing to do. Hence why we all started drinking at bus stops at 14. But now revisiting it as an adult, it's just the most stunning place. It's got a gorgeous palace. It's got a loch. It's got a canal that leads to Falkirk, the big Falkirk wheel, which is just engineering innovation at its finest. It's such a quaint, gorgeous little town. But as I say, growing up, there was very little to do for us wayward rebels. Left school at 16, 17, got into sales, realised, believe it or not, Oliver, that I was very good at talking, and couldn't believe my luck when I got a job in telesales and I was actually getting paid to talk. It was like all my Christmases had kind of come at once. So yeah, just to condense the story slightly, it was all very Wolf of Wall Street, but I got promoted very quickly, was very good at what I did, and very quickly became manager and then area manager. And at age 19, I was promoted and moved to sunny Doncaster, where I seem to have remained ever since for my sins. It was never a part of the grand plan. It certainly wasn't on the vision board. But yet, here I am, 3 children later. And yeah, I wouldn't change anything. But that's what brought me here. And yeah, what else do you want to know?
Yeah, I suppose because the biggest one of today really is your podcast, On a Mission. I know it's now On a Mission 2.0, but we'll come to that a bit later. But where did it come from? What made you start your own show?
You know what's really interesting? As a kid, I always wanted to be a journalist, specifically a war correspondent, actually. I kind of idolised Kate Adie, which you're probably too young to remember. Oh, you remember Kate Adie?
I remember
wow.
Kate Adie, yeah.
Wow, that's going back a bit. So it's kind of came full circle with the journalism and the podcast. Again, it was never really part of the plan. It just, as with a lot of things in life, just presented itself. And it happened during COVID.
Hmm.
I had launched in 2018 a property business with my soon to be ex husband. And my role within that business was very much around marketing, it was around building the brand of the company, building my own personal brand, public speaking, getting out in that public arena, raising investment. So I very much thrived on that in person energy
Hmm.
during COVID, as we all were, I was very much in a lockdown situation. And as much
Yeah.
as I did actually relish the opportunity to spend that quality time with the children, as the weeks turned into months, I felt like I was kind of losing my identity a little bit.
Hmm.
And you actually mentioned before we hit record a story that I shared in a previous podcast. Now, I'm going to share that with the listeners because it's very relevant to how the On a Mission podcast was started. There was just a random day during lockdown, everything was going just another day. They all just kind of blurred into one, didn't they?
I
But
did.
there was
Yeah.
nothing particularly out of the ordinary about this day. And my husband, my then husband, nipped to the local petrol station to go and get us some whatever, some bread, some milk, some groceries. He left. It was all very calm. It was very serene. I just jumped on the laptop to have a Zoom with my employee, Kira, who is still with us to this day. And within the space of 5 to 10 minutes, the situation deteriorated very rapidly. My youngest, Sam, I think he was 2 at the time. We were just in the throes of potty training.
Mm.
And he basically whipped his nappy off, which was extremely full, shall we say.
Uh,
He put his hands in his nappy. He then started smearing
ugh.
shit all over the walls. There's no other word for it, Oliver.
Yeah.
I'm then chasing him to try and curtail the situation, which he
Yeah.
found hilarious. It just exacerbated the whole thing.
Oh my
He's
God.
running round, knocking over all the furniture, including a chandelier style lamp, which just smashed into a million smithereens, and it was complete carnage. The other two kids are kicking off, and by the time Mark got back home, I was literally curled up on the floor, screaming, I can't do this anymore. And to his credit, he just took one look at the situation and said, you need to just go upstairs. You need a bit of time to decompress. Like, I've got this. Now, just before we went into lockdown, I'd been introduced to transcendental meditation.
Hmm.
I was part of a mastermind group, and although it was property focused, we used to do a lot of self development. We used to look into people such as Wim Hof and breath work and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
nutrition. And, it was quite holistic, really. And I just completed a 4-day course on TM meditation. Now, I don't really practice it anymore, but at that point, I was religiously doing it twice a day and I got a lot of value from it. It's one of those things, actually, that it's kind of like when you go to the gym and you get the results you want and you feel amazing and then you stop. As I'm sort of saying this to you now, I'm thinking, why on earth did I ever stop that?
Mm.
But anyway, I went into the spare room, locked myself in, literally barricaded myself away from the children, and I did a 20-minute meditation. Now, during this meditation, it just came to me from absolutely nowhere, whether you want to call it a spiritual download. I don't know.
Yeah.
Somebody cleverer and more articulate than me would be able to explain it. But this overwhelming message came to me that I needed to, it wasn't starting a podcast, but it was actually doing Facebook Lives at the time. So I came out of the podcast, and before I did anything else, before I'd even left the bedroom, I picked up my phone and I fired off some voice messages because I'm self-aware enough to know that if I don't hold myself to account and I don't take action straight away, I'll find a million and one excuses not to do the thing that I'm meant to be doing.
Hmm.
So I sent a message to a mentor of mine and a friend called Nick James. I was and still technically am in his seven-figure mastermind. I just said, Nick, I've got this idea. I'm going to call it the Sunday series. It's going to be a live interview on Facebook where we just free flow with some questions. I want it to be really informal, kind of Alan Carr style, where
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have a glass of wine, you have a beer, what have you, and we just invite the audience into this fly in the wall style fireside conversation. Now, Nick responded straight away and said, Yep, count me in, pinged me the details of his PA, get it scheduled. And then that Sunday, we went live with our first episode of the Sunday series. Now, there was no plan. I say there was no structure. We were just talking about this. I did actually have my perfectly curated questions at the time because it was extremely nerve wracking.
oh
Now,
yeah.
I didn't have any of the equipment. I just had an old battered laptop at the time. I don't even know if I had a webcam, to be honest with you. I don't think I had a microphone, but it was very much a case of start now, get perfect later. So we promoted it all over social media, and I was quite surprised. We had a decent sort of uptake of people joining this live. But as you know from Facebook, when you've got the video on there, the downloads and the views continue to go up as the days and the weeks pass. And as the days evolved, it kind of went from maybe we had 50 people on this live, which wasn't exactly breaking. But by the Wednesday, we were up to several thousand views. And I thought, oh my goodness. And
Wow.
it was a bit of a light bulb moment, really. We're all familiar with the concept of one to many, but it was a bit of a penny drop because up until that point, I was very much into building the brand, as I mentioned before. So I used to do a lot of traveling to London, to Manchester, all over the country, really, to stand on stage, talk about our journey, really, mainly talking about mindset and resilience, which has always been something I'm hugely passionate about. I'm an advocate for mental health. I spoke very openly before about my own struggles, feeling suicidal in the past, postnatal depression, going
Yep.
from being in job seekers allowance to having this multi-million pounds property portfolio. But it was always on my own dime. And this realization that I could sit in the comfort of my own home with a glass of wine in my hand and actually reach thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, it absolutely changed the game. So I continued to do this series of interviews. We did 10. I was quite well connected through the different masterminds and networks that I was in. So I was able to attract quite decent guests within the personal development, wealth creation space, if you want to call it that. And then after the 10 weeks was over, it was a pivotal moment in the sense that the world was reopening. My
Yep.
captured audience was dispersing. So I had a decision to make. Do we just wrap it up and just chalk it down to a very positive experience, or do we continue down this path and leverage what we've already started to build? And it was actually a conversation with Rob Moore, who has the Disruptors podcast and the Money podcast, very established in that space. Again, another mentor of mine, and we were going back and forth, and he encouraged me to keep going with it. We were batting ideas about, and I had it down to two titles, two names for the podcast. It was either going to be called Girl on Fire or the On a Mission podcast. And yeah, it was actually Rob that said, no, it's got to be On a Mission.
Mm.
So that was the birth of the On a Mission podcast. I then somehow managed to secure the late and great Ricky Hatton as my
Yes.
very first guest,
Wow.
which I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm quite comfortable speaking to high profile people now. I've had enough of them on my podcast, but at the time I was just a complete fangirl, completely out of my depth, had no clue what I was doing. but had managed to blag Ricky to come on the podcast, which was initially via Zoom. Then spoke to his manager and said, look, we happen to be in the area anyway. Complete lie. Any chance we can just nip in and film it in person? And he was like, oh, yeah, 6 on half a dozen. Now, we had no clue. We didn't have cameras. We didn't have mics. We had no experience. I didn't have a videographer. So at that point, I remember picking up the phone to Kira and just saying, look, we've got two options here. I've secured this incredible guest, who, by the way, she'd never heard of because she's significantly younger than me. So that was the first kind of anticlimax. I said, we can either hire a videographer and he can come and, or he or she, sorry, she can come and do all the filming and the editing. I said, or you've got 1 week to try to find out what equipment to get, you know, cameras, microphones, the job lot, and become not only proficient, but a world-class videographer. Do you accept the challenge? And she
No
was
pressure.
just like, yeah, fuck it, I'm in. And that is how the story of On a Mission started.
Yeah, fantastic, man. Yeah, you mentioned there Ricky Hatton, who sadly very, very recently left us. And you know, wherever you are, Ricky, just yeah, thank you for everything that you did, you know, and inspired a lot of people, not only just in sport, but also in life as well. And we thank you for that, Ricky, wherever you are. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Like I listen to your stuff, and you know, it's funny if you call it On a Mission. I know you ask your guests at the end of each episode, "What is your mission?" And but you speak to like a variety of people. Like there's no like specific area or stuff like that. Was that part of it as well? You just wanted to explore life and everything that it entailed.
Yeah, and also I'm not very good at taking advice, Oliver. I think that's the other thing. Everyone tells you to niche down, be very specific. I was also told to keep the podcast to 20 minutes. I thought, well, that ain't going to work for me.
Oh,
Bloody hell. I mean, I rabbit on for more than that just with the intro. And to be quite honest with you, I remember thinking at the time, if I get the opportunity to connect with these incredible, amazing people, even if no one else listens, which thankfully they did and continue to do, I thought, well, if nothing else, this is, for me, my university. This is such a privilege to be able to have these conversations. Why would I want to curtail them to 20 minutes?
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I am a very diverse person, as we all are, very multifaceted. I'm interested in a lot of different things. And as I evolve, so do the guests, so do the conversations that we're having. So we mentioned Joe Rogan before. He is my, you know, there's not too many people that I hold on a pedestal, but he's a man I hold in the greatest of regard. I've got the utmost respect what he's done with his career, and the kind of conversations that he has really resonate with me. So we've had everyone from spiritual gurus to doctors and scientists, world class athletes, multimillionaires and billionaires, right through to regular Joes and people, as you mentioned in the introduction, that have survived the unspeakable sex trafficking, or, you know, using the platform to also highlight real world issues that are really important to me. And yeah, no two conversations are the same, but
Exactly.
that kind of reflects me and my life as well.
Yeah, and there's so many layers to it. Yeah, I mean, if you just expand on that a little bit, like in, I say it relates to your life as well. Is that do you know, if I'm assuming here, but you know, you seem interested in every layer. Like if life is like a book, you want to read every single page, and you're always interested in every single page as well.
Yeah. And you know something, to anyone that's listening to this, that's considering starting a podcast,
Yeah.
as someone who has paid a lot of money, invested in myself personally and professionally to attend training courses, masterminds, seminars, personal development events, all of which I've got, or the majority of which I've definitely got a lot of value from, I can say unequivocally the thing that has accelerated me the most in all areas of my life has been the podcast, because to have direct access to such phenomenal people, I do class it as my university, and you get to the point as well when your podcast gets to a certain, I suppose, when you start to get to a certain level, it becomes easier and easier to attract a higher caliber of guests as well. So, if there is a particular subject that holds my interest, I'm interested in learning about crypto, then you go to the best rather than attending a course where you're sat in a room full of 500 people.
Yeah,
Why not get the person that's on the stage, get direct access to them, be able to build a personal relationship, ask them whatever questions that you want to ask them,
yeah,
and more often than not, then continue that relationship post interview as well. And quite often we swap to, WhatsApp, and if we're recording online, often we meet in person. And again, as my podcast got more established and I could afford to book studios and things like that as well, and started to attract sponsorships, the level of relationship building just continued to increase. And I'm so blessed to say that some of my best friends in the world have actually came from the podcast.
hmm,
It's been, without doubt, the best experience I've ever had. And, we're all very busy. Time is finite. It's our greatest resource. And, I know myself from the hundreds of messages that I get through Instagram in a day of people wanting to pick your brains. With the best will in the world, it's just not possible to be able to cut yourself into a million pieces. And also, the information that we've got has usually taken us years to acquire, and it's not something that you can just share with every random person on social media who wants to pick your brains. But what I've found is that people are so much more open and receptive to coming on a podcast, because that's, again, going back to the one to many concept. They're not just giving you their insights and wisdom, they're able to share that with a wider audience, which, let's be honest, helps to cross promote them as well, for their missions. So it's just been the most incredible experience. And although we've not got into it yet, you mentioned, I've had to relaunch my podcast. I
yeah,
can
yeah.
honestly say that not just the relationships I've built have kept me going, but some of the insights, some of the stories of resilience, some of the lessons I've learned
Mm,
have they have kept me going in my darkest hours. And this is the gift of hosting a podcast. People ask me, Ellie, what is your mission? And my mission is to learn, to grow, and to share. And as I'm developing myself, I have the privilege of being able to disseminate that to hundreds of thousands of other people as well. And the messages that you get off the back of the podcast from people saying that a particular episode has changed their life
yeah.
or
Mm.
has stopped them. And I've had several of these messages from making an irreversible decision when they've been feeling like life is futile and there's no point in continuing, to me is the ultimate barometer of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mentioned in the intro, like you mentioned there about people saying that that episode changed my life, the way I'm looking at things. And I've got to get this in again, which is the episode you did with Sara Al Madani, who's a former housewife of Dubai now. She's also an entrepreneur. She's been you talked about how she was making money since the age of 8 or 10 or something. She's growing up, and now she's part of a big. She's got her own businesses, etc. She's a big tycoon herself. But she that episode really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I'm not just saying this because you're here. I ain't pissing in your pocket here, Ellie. But I'm just gonna say that episode really, really opened my eyes to a lot of things about just ultimately just putting yourself first, and like being open and just being open about the fact that life changes, and when you do like put yourself first, you start to see all your friends or friends in inverted commas disappearing, and suddenly your life opens up, and suddenly you meet a new tribe, you meet a new bunch of people. And how yeah, I love how she said she always wears a hat in interviews because she's protecting her head chakra and stuff like that, and Yeah, and so yeah, I really take my hat off to you for that episode, and you should get her back on again. You should do a part two at some point. I'd love to listen to that, and I think that'd be great.
And you know what's really interesting is every time you listen to a podcast episode, it's just the same, I find, as when you re-listen to an audiobook or
Mm,
reread a book. You always get something a little bit different. I remember actually one of my mentors saying to me, rather than reading hundreds of books, just read a few books hundreds of times,
mm,
because we get so many people within the self-development space that just go from book to course, and they don't actually absorb the information. But re-listening to the Sarah episode recently, I got so much personal value from it, from being at this stage of my life. I mean, Sarah's a huge inspiration to me. She's a multi millionaire, but
mm.
she has been through some true hardship, and
Yeah, yeah,
she's
yeah.
been through bankruptcy twice. Now, again, I feel like we're skipping a few stages, but my circumstances have changed significantly over the last 2 years. The fact that I have had the privilege of interviewing so many people who have faced financial ruin and bounced back on multiple occasions is something that gives me great strength navigating some of the challenges that I've had more recently.
Mm.
Sarah being one of them. She's been bankrupt twice, like I say.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that another thing just hearing that there is that you know life is a journey. You know, it's a cliche, but it's very very true. You know, you're picking apart people's journeys and stuff. And I remember there was one in particular. I can't remember her name. Sorry, but I think it was a two-parter you did where you'd had the girl talking about her experience with trafficking, unfortunately, and I can't remember her name as such, but
Lorata.
Lorata, yeah, thank you. I remember listening to that on a walk one day, and funny enough, you know, recently I'd seen a play about something like that, about that sort of thing, very similar to what she went through and stuff, and a film as well. It was called Sound of Freedom, which was, yeah, I'm not sure if have you seen it at all? Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a beautiful film, but it's about a very real and very dark topic. And unfortunately, it's like, you know, in the arts and, you know, in your industry and like going to courses and stuff like that, there's some dark corners of this world. There are some very dark corners, and they need to be exposed and they need to be gone and got rid of, essentially. But I was listening to that story, and the detail that she went into was just, I mean, it was spine chilling, absolutely spine chilling what she went through. And you know, I implore people to go listen to that as well. It's, I mean, when you hear a story like that, I mean, what does it do to you? Like, because you're in the room and you're in the energy of the room and the chemical reactions happening in the room. Well, what does it do to you when you hear a story like that?
Okay, so a couple of points I want to make, and this is actually one of the, I don't know, it's a conversation that I actually have a lot, because I believe I want to use my podcast as a platform for good, and that means shining a light on the good, the bad, and the ugly. And over 10 million children are sex trafficked every single year. You mentioned the Sound of Freedom. Tim Ballard is hopefully actually coming on the
Yeah,
On a Mission podcast.
is he?
But how do you protect your energy when you're doing a deep dive into the most heinous crimes,
Yeah.
when you are talking about the absolute worst of humanity?
Mm,
This is kind of why everything I think is interlinked, going back to your previous point about how diverse the interviews are. Because when we're talking about spiritual healing, when we're talking about physical health, when we're talking about biohacking, whilst we're talking about mindset,
mm,
these things are absolutely imperative in order to be able to facilitate these conversations, because you are taking yourself to a very dark place.
hmm.
And it's that whole cliche, you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Yep.
So you do have to protect your own energy as much as possible. You need to absorb this information in a way that you have to be in a very good space, or I have found personally, to be able to do that when you're already battling your own demons and you're then looking at the worst of humanity. It can tip you over the edge. But talking specifically about the Lorata interview. Now, I think that was about a 3 hour conversation. It was one of the most powerful interviews that I've ever done.
Mm.
What a tale of resilience. For anyone who's
Yeah.
not familiar with Lorata's story, please go to the On a Mission podcast and check it out, because
Yeah.
this lady she is made of absolute steel.
Yeah.
Now, what you probably don't know, Oliver, is I was recording that podcast in London,
Okay.
Tuesday, January the 22nd, 2025. Now, my memory's pretty shit, so you're probably wondering how I can recall that with such accuracy. A couple of hours after recording that podcast, I was sat having a coffee with a good friend of mine in London, catching up, another fellow podcast host.
Hmm.
We both had a few hours to spare, and then we had our retrospective events that we were going to that evening. That is the day that I got the phone call from my ex-husband to tell me everything had gone. One phone call literally shattered my entire life.
Jesus.
And when I say everything's gone, I mean everything had gone. He'd ran our property development business into the ground. There was debts attached that I had absolutely no knowledge about. Our property portfolio had been sold without my consent. There had been charges put on our family home. And at the point of getting this phone call, there was literally nothing left. As in, no money to even feed my own children at this point. Within a very short time frame of getting that phone call, my entire world collapsed. The house got repossessed, the car got repossessed, the
Wow.
companies got liquidated. I had to sit down and look at my 70-year-old father in the eye and tell him his life savings were gone as one of the investors in our business. It was an absolute shit show. But one of the things that kept me going in my darkest hour, and I do not believe in coincidences,
Mm.
was recalling the strength of Lorata. And on the very day that it all came crumbling down, that we'd sat there and had this life-changing conversation. And whilst it definitely wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, and I went through extremely low periods, knowing and having the context that my worst day compared to Lorata's worst day were worlds apart.
Hmm.
And actually, during a time in my life where, I was under an enormous amount of stress and pressure that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, it was very traumatic. It was traumatic for my children. It was traumatic for everyone involved. I also have never experienced such gratitude and had such awareness of the darkness that's going on in the world. And, every downside has an upside and every upside has a downside. That's a message I got from another podcast guest, Dr.
Yeah.
John D. Martini. So even in those darkest hours, to have the understanding and the knowledge, even at the point of registering myself as homeless in this country, that does not mean having to live under a bridge. My children would have, by hook or by crook, always had 3 square meals a day and a roof over their head, which is more than can be said for the children in Gaza at the moment or all the other war-ravaged countries across the world. And as I mentioned before, 10 million children sex trafficked across the world. I don't have the accurate number for adults, but there's more modern day slavery going on now than at any other point in history. We talk so much about the slave trade and the atrocities of time gone by, but actually here now, 2025, it's worse than ever. So whilst that doesn't mean that we can't experience pain and hardship, I think having had these conversations directly with people who have been gang raped, who have seen the absolute worst of the world, it definitely helped to get me through some of those really hard moments.
Yeah. Wow. Incredible. Yeah. And so one of the many things I love about you, Ellie, is that your resilience. there, and it comes across in your interviews, and of course you share your own life story and everything there. I mean, the fact that you're like, as you say, there's always, I remember saying this on another episode actually, but there's always something to be grateful for, no matter what. And I'm lucky enough to interview someone called Harriet Madeley, who's an actor, and she did a show in London this year called Outpatient. It's a one lady show. It's one lady show, one woman show, however you say. And it was all about her experiences with she's been diagnosed with a very rare liver disease. I think it's liver or something like that, but it's got a very long name. And wait, have I got it here actually? Hang on. But she wrote a play about it, and she was keen to sort of like expose, well, not expose it, but just talk about her life as a result of this. And hang on, just bear with me, guys. Give me 2 seconds. Give me 1 second, Ellie. I'll find it here somewhere. Where is it? Antonia. Harriet. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to mispronounce this. Primary sclerosing cholangitis, or PSC in the medical trade. It's a flow of bile is stopped by bile ducts by the liver, and they become blocked. So essentially, it's not getting the things that it should get. And at this moment in time, there is no cure. So, and Harriet was so open and so lovely with me, and she just, yeah, guys, go check that episode out if you haven't already. But it shows that through the arts and podcasting is that we can heal from these. We can have these open and candid conversations about things. I've talked about plays on here. Again, I'm going to say it for the 100 millionth time. But A Little Life, prima facie, A Little Life was a story about the Catholic Church, a boy growing up abandoned as a boy, as a baby, and growing up in the Catholic Church, and the rest, what happens there happens. And it shows that, and then one thing I got it written down here actually is that I remember, in fact, if you've seen that film 12 Years a Slave.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Steve McQueen.
Musician, is that the musician?
No, it's the Steve McQueen. There's two. There's one musician and one the director. And Steve McQueen is just, he's a
No,
master.
was he a musician that got captured into slavery in the film, I mean?
Yeah. That's Solomon Northup. That's who it's based on, yeah. And so Steve McQueen, director, and Chiwetel Ejiofor played Solomon Northup, and he wrote a book called 12 Years a Slave, which I actually studied in for A-level history. And it was, it's a beautiful book, but the stories that he's got in there. And I love the phrase that when they won the Oscar for that, for Best Picture, Steve McQueen stood on stage and said, not everyone deserves not just to survive, but to live. And I think, and that's one message I get from your show as well, that everyone deserves not just to survive, but to live. Going back to the trafficking podcast you did, tell me about that. It's like not everyone deserves, to live and not just exist. How have you found stories like that?
Again, you mentioned the word resilience, and I suppose that's the underlying theme of the On a Mission podcast. It's not about, what's a successful life at the end of the day. Financially, I've probably never been so skinned, but I consider myself more wealthy and successful than I ever have been in my entire life. And another very powerful episode that springs to mind is a lady called Nina Ulk, who was basically kept in modern day slavery in the family home. I think from age 8 years old, she was cooking, she was cleaning, she was kept in solitary confinement, really, working up into midnight every single night. She was gang raped by her own father and his friends repeatedly. She was then basically sold at 15, 16 into an arranged marriage where the abuse continued. She was kept in the most heinous conditions. And again, the strength that that woman has demonstrated, it's hard to articulate. It's really difficult to put into words. And very much like Lorata, she has made it her mission not just to survive, but to thrive. And now goes around, she's uh, an advisor for the UN. She
Yeah.
does keynotes across the world, raising awareness on human trafficking. Um, she's written books. She does podcasts. She is making such a difference in this world. And hundreds, if not thousands, of women in particular reach out to her every single month. She's launched a charity. She's just an incredible force for good. And I think I always say, and this is a term that I probably overuse in my own podcast, but I really believe this in my core. Relationships are the highest form of currency.
Yeah.
And when you surround yourself with people who have survived the unthinkable and not only came out the other end of it, but they are a shining light for all that is good in the world, it's nothing short of inspiring. And if I can emulate just a fraction of that, Oliver, then I feel like I'm making a valid contribution. I mentioned earlier on that I've had messages from people that have said that a particular podcast episode or even a social media post, something that I've shared, because sometimes I feel like I overshare almost, but it only takes that one message from someone to say that something that I've shared or something that a guest of mine has shared has stopped them from taking their own life. And you think, wow, if I've done nothing else in this lifetime, I know that I've had a direct impact in preventing multiple people from committing suicide.
Mm.
Now, we all have our own definition of success,
Hmm.
but for me, that really has to be the absolute ultimate. And to be here at 42 years old, I was 17, 18, I was earning 100 grand a year. Here I am, 42 years old, not a penny to my name, living in a rented house. And I tell you what, I have never felt more successful. I am surrounded by the most incredible people. My podcast is relaunched and it's gaining traction. I have absolutely no doubt that that will be a seven-figure business within the next 5 years. I have
Absolutely.
absolutely no doubt. I am extremely blessed. I have so many incredible people that are wanting to do brand partnerships and affiliate with me. I've got an ice tub in my garden. I've got an infrared sauna. I have a PMF mat. I have my red light therapy. I've got all these incredible people that are sending me these products. This is what I'd be spending my money on anyway. And I feel so blessed. I have so much gratitude. And I actually think that I have been presented with the most unique opportunity to implement everything I know, everything I believe in, and everything I've spoke about for the last God knows how many years. Put this into practice and show people that failure is not final. In fact, I think it was Winston Churchill that said failure is bumbling from one failure to the next without any loss of enthusiasm. And
Definitely.
yeah, I really massively resonate with that. And actually, I have stood before on stage at Wembley in front of 600 people and said, you can strip me of all my assets, you can strip me of all my financial wealth, and I'm telling you right now, unequivocally, that I will be able to rebuild because you cannot take my mindset, you can't take away my work ethic, you cannot take away the quality of the relationships that I am capable of building.
Hmm.
So, for anyone listening to this, be careful what you say because words are powerful.
They
The
are.
universe listens, and
It does.
sometimes it takes you a bit too fucking literally.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. No, that's something I've learned this year as well, is that words are they're powerful things. I can't remember who said it. He said, "Be careful." Was it Bruce Lee who said this? I'm not sure, but he said, "Be careful what you say because words are powerful. That's why they're spells. That's why they call it spelling." And like you say, this year I've adopted like a much more motivated mindset. I said, yeah, I know it's almost like you said there, like I know my podcast is going to be a 7-figure business in the next 5 years, and so actually I'm going to steal that off you actually. So yeah, I'll be like, yeah, the Uncensored Critic will be a 7-figure business in 5 years time, or will be over the course of the next 5 years. I will have an incredible acting career. I'm going to meet the best agent. I'm going to write the best plays and have the best podcast, best #1 arts related podcasts in the world, and just put it out there. And of course, we'll cover other topics like we're doing today. What words are powerful, and that manifesting is definitely real, and it happens. I don't know if you've ever had an experience. Well, I'm sure you have, but I don't want to assume. But I don't. Have you ever had an experience where you've spoken about something like you've really, really wanted, and then 2 or 3 years later, there it is exactly as you said it would be there?
Oh, I mean, it happens a lot quicker for me. Yeah, I mean, we can all be quite deprecating, but one thing I will say about myself is that I am the most powerful manifester that I have ever met, and I do bring things into fruition very, very quickly. So yeah, I mean, I can give you so many examples of that. And words are powerful. Word thoughts are powerful.
Mm,
Everything is about energy, it's frequency, and I don't mean that in a woo-woo sort of way, but really,
that's true.
it's quantum physics. I
Yep.
have demonstrated that throughout the last 18 months because one of the things I realized, Oliver, is that
Yep.
when you're at rock bottom, when you have basically lost all your commercial value, as I had no podcast anymore. We just got to #1 in the UK charts. I taken my social media down. Now I'm only on Instagram at the moment, which was actually my worst performing platform, but I'd lost hundreds of thousands of followers
Mm.
through taking down my LinkedIn and my YouTube and what have you. Now, certain people just scarpered like rats in a sinking ship.
Yeah,
But
they
then
do.
there was other people who really had my back and stood in my corner. But I did realize very, very quickly that whilst people would have empathy and whilst they would have compassion and they put their arm around you and they might buy you a coffee, it's all about who you are and how you project to the world. And if I'd have stayed in that frequency, then the people that I had in my life, and it wouldn't necessarily been a conscious decision that they made, they would have gradually started to disappear because high performance people, they operate on a different frequency to everyone else.
Mm.
The muggles and the wizards. It's as simple as that. And I noticed that was gradually starting to happen. You can only stay at that low vibration so long and
Mm.
expect to keep the high vibration in your life. So, life is brutal, and a lot of people don't really talk about this. And this is just how it is. Life is brutal. If you
Hmm.
want to keep around the movers and shakers, it's not necessarily about how much money you're bringing to the table or what opportunities you have access to at the moment, but it's about how you show up, and it's about whether or not in the darkest hours you are able to walk that walk. Because,
Yep.
is it Mike Tyson that says everyone has a plan until they get
Yeah.
punched in
Punch
the
in the face.
face?
Yeah.
That is the reality of it, and
True.
it's how you show up when you're actually in the trenches. But the thing is, I said this earlier in the podcast, whilst I wouldn't wish my experience on my worst enemy, I am genuinely very, very grateful for it, because you learn so much more about yourself in the trenches than you
Yeah, you do.
ever will in the mountaintops. That's a fact.
You do, yeah. And I remember someone saying, you mentioned quantum physics there for us, which is it's true. It's almost like you create, no matter what vibration you're in, you create a feedback loop. So what you put out there will always come back. So if you put out good stuff, then good stuff will come back. So it's like karma, basically. You put out bad stuff, then sooner or later it will find its way back to you. So it's like those people, and you've probably met those people who are constantly bemoaning bad luck. Things go, oh, things are going all right, but you watch, something's going to happen, and oh, there it is, there's the feedback loop. It's it's all about just adopting a healthier mindset, and that's something I've sort of learned over the last few years, which is to keep your. I remember my mum always says, keep your vibration high, keep things at a high level, and tell the universe what you want, and then it will find its way to you one way or another. But yeah, I suppose this is a question I sort of thought about earlier, really. But while we're on this sort of topic, I think it was J.K. Rowling who said rock bottom was the foundation on which I rebuilt my life. And I love that quote so much. I think it's fantastic. So, having been on this journey or this mission of yours, which I'm sure people have said to you many, many times, so I've just added fuel to that fire. But I suppose it was slightly different, really. So, what would you say was the difference between Ellie when you started the podcast to the Ellie I'm speaking to right now?
A seven-figure property portfolio for one,
That's one aspect,
and a
yeah.
husband, and a big fucking house, and
Very
a Range
fucking
Rover.
Range Rover. Amen, brother. Amen.
It's I was already very much down the self-development path, and I think actually COVID
Yeah,
was also quite instrumental in shaping my character because it really reshaped how I viewed the world. It reshaped how I viewed humanity. But again, going back to the point I made earlier about the definition of success and how
yeah,
subjective it is, this is something I was already covering on the podcast. This was the premise really of the podcast prior to it all going tits up. But I'd identified that for me, there's just so many things. I've interviewed enough people now, the multimillionaires of this world, the people that we are told to look up to that outwardly have everything. They have the dream bodies, they have the so-called perfect relationships, they've got the gorgeous houses, the flashy cars, the swimming pools, the 2.4 children,
mm,
yet they're deeply unhappy. They are addicted to drugs, they are addicted to porn, they're
yeah,
having an affairs, they hardly ever see their children, or they have a poor relationship with their children, or they're on all forms of antidepressants or medication, or God forbid they've went to take their own life or come very, very close to it. So, thankfully I'd kind of got that memo, if you like, beforehand. I'd started to connect in, as cheesy as it sounds,
yeah,
to everything that is and everything that's gone before, starting to really like seek solace from being out in nature, coastal walks, walking in the woods, all of that kind of thing, which again I think's really held me in good stead because for the most part, don't get me wrong, my children are very privileged in the sense that they've had the 5-star holidays, they've travelled the world, but equally the vast majority of our time was spent walking around national trusts and going for picnics and things like that. So
nice.
90% of their life hasn't particularly changed. Yeah, they're like, had to pull my eldest daughter out of private school and things like that. But I mean, actually, a lot of that stuff is it's very surface level anyway. So I'm very grateful that that was instilled in them. Otherwise, that could have been a lot more disruptive to what's ended up ensuing over the last couple of years. But what I've learned, or what is reinforced to me, is that relationships are the highest form of currency. Your health is your number one priority: physical, mental, spiritual health, who you surround yourself with, what you allow yourself to consume. For example, Oliver, something that I've just changed just very, very recently is completely coming off social media,
Mm,
being a producer, not a consumer. So you'll see my content going out every day on Instagram. I don't even have my logins. I've told Kira, my podcast manager, my best friend, my PA, my video editor, my videographer, all rolled into one. Change my passwords. I don't want to see. I don't care what everyone else is doing. I don't want to get caught up in the noise. I don't want to get distracted with what's going on in the world. Stopped listening to the news. Stopped
yeah, me too.
allowing the dark energy. And there's a lot of dark energy that is out there
Mm,
to basically infiltrate my state, because in order for me to achieve what I want to achieve, and I've got some pretty big goals, then I need to remain hyper focused. And I mentioned to you before that, sorry, this is a very long-winded answer.
No, no.
I was very much into self-development. I kind of think that this has really made me double down on it like tenfold. And something that I've said before, and I will repeat for your audience, is good is the enemy of great. You know, my marriage was good, it wasn't great. There was a lot of issues. My life was good, but it wasn't great. Had this big grenade not been thrown into my life,
Yeah.
would I have taken the action that I needed to take to get to where I am today? Yes, financially, I'm not as successful at the moment, but
Hmm.
you know, the wheels are very much in motion.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
every other area of my life, I am excelling. The relationships, the quality of my friendships, the way that I interact with my children, my physical health, my spiritual health. The path that I'm down now is, you know, I've been redirected. I'm a very spiritual person. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and I believe that we're all exactly where we deserve to be in life. So I feel extremely blessed to be sat here today having this conversation. I spend so much of my time talking to spiritual leaders, thought leaders, biohackers. I am extremely lucky, and luck is something that I believe that we all very much create for ourselves.
Absolutely. Amen to that, man. Amen.
I can't even remember what the question was, but I feel like I must have answered it at some
No, you
point in that
definitely, yeah, you definitely
ramble.
did. Yeah, no, it's like the difference between like pre-podcast and now, but it's a real journey which you've been on, and and to be facing it like oh, what was that? I keep forgetting her bloody name, like Lorata, she, obviously I'm not comparing your stories here at all, but just the strength to go through what you've been through, I think is hugely admirable in every sort of way. And if like, you mentioned there spiritual experiences, I was going to ask you like if you had any kind of experiences like that, but I think you've kind of answered that already. I think, but
Yeah, you know what? There's been a few things actually. Can I just say, actually, one of the biggest challenges that I have
yeah.
faced over the last 2 years has been memory, memory retention, which
Mhm.
for a podcast host as well is a real problem. Now, I've been getting probably between 2 and 5 hours sleep consistently, which actually causes extreme trauma to the brain.
Oh, really?
Now, a lot of that is stress induced. So I've been doing energy healing as well as a lot of the biohacking protocols as well. But to be, and when I say memory retention, that actually extends to vocabulary. I
Mm.
would say that my vocabulary's been 20-30% of my former vocabulary. Things like, I mean, although we can all do this to an extent, like you asked me a question there, and actually, I feel like this is something that's improving and has improved significantly in the last 2 or 3 months.
Hmm.
I would ask a guest a question, or vice versa, if I'm on somebody else's podcast. I'd be 30 seconds into answering it, and I completely forget what was saying, what
Mm.
the point of the conversation was, completely lose the thread. And
Mm.
this was something that was happening continually. So I don't actually think people have picked up on it, but I know myself that the quality of the conversations was yeah, it was just not a representation of what I'm capable of. And I heard Chris Williamson talking about this because he's actually
Yeah.
dealing with some autoimmune issues at the moment,
Oh,
which
really?
people hadn't picked up on. But he was saying the same thing in this video that I just watched on YouTube. And I thought, wow. And although the reasons behind it were completely different, I thought as a fellow podcaster, I could really resonate with that because he actually used the example that one day he looked down, he couldn't remember how to tie his shoelaces. And I thought, you know, I've actually had that myself. Sleep deprivation is used as a form of torture. So when you're
Mm.
getting 2, 3 hours sleep multiple nights, you know, on the bounce, it can completely fuck with your head. But
Mm.
to answer the point about the more spiritual side, I've had a few little, what I can only class as taps on the shoulder
Yeah.
where it feels to me like it's divine intervention. Whether you call that God or universe, I think it's all one.
Yeah.
But just earlier this year, I was doing dry January, and it's not an exaggeration to say I actually almost felt a physical tap on my shoulder to say, that's it, you're done. You don't need to drink anymore. That's it. Stop. And yeah, that was the last drop of alcohol that I had. And it just felt like such a clear message that it almost wasn't even a challenge or became a mute point. It was like, okay, this is the direction that I've been told to take, and this is it now. And as someone who absolutely loved a glass of red wine, which was definitely starting to creep up over the last couple of years, as as the sort of in line with the stress and anxiety from the situation, it was it was actually quite a profound experience, and I've had several of those over the years. So yeah, I do believe in a higher power. I kind of feel, without going too deep on this, that we're in a spiritual war at the moment, and I want to continue to become the best version of myself, to play whatever role I need to play in this spiritual war moving forward, by bringing the best people onto my podcast and trying to get this information out there.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. I love the fact you've got Tim Ballard coming on soon. I mean, have you recorded it yet, or is he? Or
No.
is he? Has he yet? Okay. Yeah, I'd love to speak to him. Speak to him. I think he'd be incredible. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just the stuff that he's done, and the children that he saved, and all that kind of thing. I feel that that would definitely be one for the yeah. Now, please let me know when that one's out. Yeah, because I want to listen to that eagerly. Yeah, I think there's another film of his coming out because they made Sound of Freedom. Now they're going to make. So they're making another one. I think it's about Haiti or something. One of the two. Anyway, more to be revealed, I'm sure, in the future. But yeah, no, it's. But when you say, like, when you are on that sleep deprivation train as such, and of course you want to get off as soon as possible, really. But how does that feel? Well, why was it only 2.5 hours sleep a night? I mean, how do you get yourself in that position?
Oh, well, I mean, it's not something that we choose to put ourselves in.
Of course, yeah.
Uh, Nothing like a little bit of trauma, really, to spike the cortisone levels, is the honest answer, Oliver. I've been through quite a lot, going through divorce, made homeless twice within a 12-month period,
Yeah.
dealing with all the financial challenges, having to liquidate companies, having to go personally bankrupt. And as much as during my waking hours, I feel like I've been pretty good at moving forward. I feel that so I always quote Tony Robbins, and he says, "Where focus goes, energy flows,"
Hmm.
which I do, and I'm an extremely positive person. The one area of my life, as I've been making all these changes, I've not been able to control, has been the sleep aspect of it. So
Hmm.
getting to sleep, no problem at all, but just waking up, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., anytime to 5 a.m. really. And that's it then. Not particularly thinking about anything, not particularly feeling stressed, but just absolutely wide awake. But the long term impact of sleep deprivation, for anyone who knows about it, I mean, you're taking years off your life expectancy, but things like the memory, it has a huge impact. I actually was at a biohacking event in London this summer with a guy called Brian Johnson, who's the biohacker that spends a couple of £1 million every month on longevity. And there's a Netflix documentary, Never Say Die, because he's very much trying to, I think, live to 120 plus, and he's doing all these different crazy protocols to aid that. But I mean, a lot of that is just for marketing, to bring attention to the cause. But when I went to listen to this talk of his, I had no clue what it was going to be about. And ironically, I'd had 2 hours sleep the night before it. He was equating sleep deprivation to having a car crash. Now, he was coming at it from the angle of, there was a lot of high performing entrepreneurs. I mean, I'm not going to name drop, but the people in that room were like, I mean, it was insane. Everywhere I looked, I was like, oh, I recognize that person. Oh, is that person from the telly? Or, oh, that's that person that owns such and such company, So I think the when he was doing Who's Talk, it was more aimed at people who burn the candle at both ends,
Yeah.
or they work really late, they get up early, and it's almost kind of worn as a bit of a badge of honor. But in my case, I was someone who was very much trying to get my 8 hours sleep. I understand the significance and the importance of getting sleep. And I'm trying all these different things.
Mm.
People were sending me all sorts of stuff. I've had all the best supplements, still take all the best supplements. I'm taking my light blocking glasses, phone's on airplane mode at 9 o'clock at night. I've got my pulse electromagnetic field mat, which has actually been a game changer for my physical and my mental health, but
Mm.
wasn't particularly helping with the sleep. I was doing the red light, I was doing the infrared sauna. I was doing absolutely everything I was being told to do by Huberman or by Gary Brecka, and nothing was working. I'm doing energy healing, but I've got to say, and I don't want to tempt fate, but I've now had probably 2 weeks of really good sleep, 7+ hours, and I
Yeah.
kind of feel that actually, again, it's all interlinked. There's chucking a bit of perimenopause as well, just for good measure. And you're just like, fucking hell, pick your poison here. But ultimately, I don't know if you follow people like Louise Hay, the late Louise Hay, but the body holds
Okay.
the score. And you
Yes.
cannot go through everything that I've been through without working through things. And I think the sleep was the last part to kind of the trauma to work itself out, if that kind of makes sense. So maybe if we do a follow-up appointment, I'll be able to sort of confirm this.
Mhm.
But touch wood, we're a few weeks in now to getting 7+ hours sleep, and I've got to say, I feel like an absolute superhuman.
Wonderful. That's what we like to hear. It's just simple remedies, I think, really. It's just like getting a few hours sleep, getting more sleep, not looking at your phone in bed at night. That's something I need to stop doing, actually. But so I'm really bad. It's just like there at 11:30 at night. It's like, no, stop. Get rid of it, man. Get rid of it. I'm trying. I'm trying. But yeah, no, there's so many things there, just simple things to help you get back on your feet, and it's life, isn't it? It's life. It's
Yeah, bit by bit. I mean, I've done some of the crazy stuff over this last 2 years, and sometimes what gets you to one level is not what's necessarily going to take you to the next level. But
yeah,
I'll share this just because it's a bit of a daft thing, and it's not something I ever thought I would do. And
yeah,
actually,
yeah.
now that I've very much evolved from this stage, it's not something that I can ever see myself doing again. But I did it, and it really, really worked. I went through a stage when I'm going through absolute shit, and I've got grenades getting thrown at me in every different direction. I just found out that the rental house that we'd moved into, the landlord and the landlady were moving back from China. We'd only been there a few weeks, and then they wanted us back out again, and hence why I had to register as homeless at a second time. And because of my credit score and my financial situation, we couldn't find anywhere else. And I'm dealing with all this other stuff, and I remember just feeling so low. I've told my now ex-husband I wanted a divorce, and sort of worried about the implications of that in terms of, suicide and like really heavy stuff going on. And I remember just putting the music on and dancing in front of the mirror, which was something that I'd been introduced to at a spiritual health retreat a couple of years ago. And I just thought, what a load of fucking bollocks. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, that's not for people like me. And anyway, it just came back into my head. And I actually had to make eye contact with myself, which is really uncomfortable to do. I
Hmm.
would encourage everyone to try it because it's really hard. We talk about acts of self-love, but actually a lot of the time it's just buzzwords on social media. But
Mm.
looking myself square on in the eye, listening to music and dancing, looking at my own reflection, listening to really upbeat music. Sometimes I'd listen to, say I'd find a power song that really lifted my spirits. I'd listen to the same song, excuse me, over and over again,
Mm.
8, 9, 10 times obsessively. Perhaps I'm a bit autistic, but excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. But yeah, like just some of the protocols, some of the things that you have to do just to get yourself in a vibration to be able to survive at that point, not to thrive, but just to survive.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. You know, just what I want to take a sort of just little turn here now, but you know, when you're hearing, just going back to your podcast just for a bit, but I was curious about like when you with that when you're hearing someone's story, and you know from taking a break from like the heavy stuff now, but you know when you're hearing a story that inspires you or makes you laugh. I mean, and of course you find your guests, you know, as a result of, you know, I don't know if you go to them or your PR goes to them, whatever, but you get the people on that you want to talk to. And so, but what is it about when you're hearing, what is it about hearing people's life stories that excites you, do you think?
I mean, I suppose it very much depends on the individual, but we've all just got such different backgrounds. We all have such different life experiences, and
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes one golden nugget from an interview can completely change the trajectory of your life. I
yeah.
mentioned before as well, it's like your own university. This is how I see my podcast. It's my own personal university. This is how I learn. This is how I
Yeah,
evolve. This is how I grow. I kind of joke and say, oh, I don't like people in a lot of ways. I'm a bit of a hermit, but actually, that's not quite true. I like my people. I love my people,
love your
and
tribe. Yeah,
of course, I can curate that on my podcast. So yeah, just hearing the inspirational stories, what can be achieved, knowing that nothing in this life is off limits. I think it's Henry Ford that says, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're probably right. And that story is reflected time after time, interview after interview,
mm,
conversation after conversation. And, we obviously talk about the heavier stuff as we've spoke about, but so many of the podcasts are actually really uplifting. They're really inspiring to see where people have came from and what they've gone on to achieve. And I don't just mean in terms of monetary success. I mean in every aspects of life, physical feats, just yeah, some incredible stories for some incredible people. And what a blessed position as podcast hosts that we are both in
yeah,
to be able to hear those stories and connect with these people and to often become friends as well.
yeah, 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 yeah.
An amazing life we get to live. What an absolute privilege.
Yeah, and it's very true. I mean, when I first started doing this, I just thought I was just the guy that asked questions, you know, and well, of course that's true, but it's so much more than that. I can't tell you how many relationships I've curated as a result of this. You know, I found out very recently I met up with someone in London, I think, two nights ago, who's been on the show twice. He's a fellow actor as well, who did perform in that play, A Little Life, which I spoke about earlier. And we done our second episode together, and we finally just said, "Oh, yeah, there's an event tonight. We're celebrating the actual book, which is based on." And you go in, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, I might do. Yeah, I mean, I'll see if I'm allowed out tonight or something like that." And then I get a message from him in the foyer about half an hour before the curtain went up, and he was like, "Hey, dude, I'm here. Where are you?" And it's like, and there we are. You know, we're up just from a conversation on Zoom or two conversations on Zoom has then led to us meeting in person and then possibly making connections with the rest of the company and all that stuff, you know. And you just never know where. And of course, I've spoken about this before as well, but it shows you that being nice goes a hell of a long way, and it's so simple, but it's absolutely, yeah, it's the bedrock of everything, isn't it? And just enjoying and listening to people and hearing their stories. You know, I love you. You've interviewed Sean Atwood, right?
I have, yeah, another
Yeah,
great guy. Really
yeah. I mean,
interesting.
a drug dealer turned now the guy who wants to expose. He's talking about the Epstein list. He's talking about Ghislaine Maxwell. He's talking about all kinds of conspiracies and stuff, and stuff, a lot of which have turned out to be true. And yeah, I mean, his story as well. Like, I mean, you just think you can't make this up. And I don't know about you, but this human life experience that we have, it's so authentic and it's so human. And I love that phrase. You just can't make this shit up. You can't, can you?
No, like I've got another guy coming on actually. I was just chatting to him yesterday called Kev Lane. He just spent 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He's been
Wow,
exonerated, contract killer, 20 years in a AAA category, AAA prison,
wow,
which is
scary.
like you can't get any higher than that. Just shows the range of the conversations that we're having, from reformed drug dealers to gangsters to I mean
It's
thought leaders. I'm trying to think of the like some of the other people that I've had on. I mean, you
yeah.
probably know better than me with my memory function at the moment.
I suppose like what stories haven't you heard yet that you'd like to? What kind of people do you think you want to hear from which you haven't yet?
I mean, again, as dark as it sounds, I think I do want to continue to highlight what's going on in the world. There's a lot of things that are happening out there that
Mm,
I've got quite a passionate stance on, really, from digital IDs to COVID vaccines to
yeah, yeah,
the indoctrination that we're seeing to the genocides that we stand by and watch. These are really powerful conversations. And I was actually, in fact, I was just invited just before I jumped on this podcast to go to Brussels to go to join a good friend of mine, Dan Aston Gregory, who's part of an initiative, a new initiative, Make Europe Healthy Again. So, he's going to Brussels to, you know, have the most impactful conversations and some of the, I mean, to talk about moving the needle, really, Oliver, that's the kind of thing that I want to be part of,
yeah,
I want to be making a significant difference in the world. I'd love to continue the work that we're already doing. And we've got Gary Brecka coming on. I'd love to get Huberman on. I'd love to get Joe Rogan on. These are my
hmm,
heroes. I've
yeah,
got James O'Keefe is coming on. I've watched James O'Keefe for years. Again, there's not many people that I fangirl over, but I don't mind openly admitting James O'Keefe is one of them. The work that he did with Project Veritas, the stuff that he's doing now with O'Keefe Media,
yeah,
he from exposing what's going on with the border control in America, the human trafficking, and everything in between, the undercover conversations he's had or his team have had with top level Pfizer employees, exposing the corruption that we've all sort of been exposed to over the last 5 years.
oh
It's
yes,
just, it's I just feel like at the moment this is our golden hour. Alternative media has never been so prevalent. There's a reason that more and more people are turning to us as podcast hosts because trust has been absolutely eroded. Joe
yeah,
Rogan gets more downloads in one episode than ABC, Fox, CNN, all of them combined
yeah,
because people are not stupid. We've been told that we're all ADD, ADHD.
yeah,
We can only absorb short sound bites of information, but actually the facts do not reflect that. You mentioned Joe Rogan 3-4 hours, Sean Ryan 6-7 hours. Some of these podcast episodes,
yeah,
I listen to them. People want nuance. People want to hear the different opinions. They want to hear the detail. They don't want to hear the perfectly curated sound bites. I think people are waking up.
mm, yeah, and I think it's all. I'm really happy that it is that it is, and I'm really happy that people are as well. It's there's a lot of things out there which I think and there's I think that the arts does that as well. We present a lot of stuff, and particularly films. It presents a lot of things that show you what's going on right now, obviously, and of course over the course of history, etc. But what's actually happening in the world now, and it's almost like the films are full of all these things which show you what's going on right now and what potentially could be happening in the future. In this AI world that we live in right now, and these films like I, Robot, pretty much anything with Will Smith, really. But it's yeah, so it makes you think, is he part of it? I don't know, but it shows you like where we are, And I think one thing I love about the arts, and of course a podcast like yours as well, is that we have the capacity to make a difference. We have the ability to change. I have a saying which I say on here quite a bit. You know, artists, actors, theatre, films, the film industry, the theatre industry, artists, actors, we change the fucking world. We really, really do, and that's what inspires me to keep going, keep up with this, and of course inspires yourself as well to keep up with these conversations and say, look, this is what's happening in the world right now. Look at it. This is what's happening, and
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, long may it continue, man. Long may it continue. But yeah, but, do you know when's Tim coming on? Did you say have you got him booked in?
Yeah, we're just going back and forth at the moment. So hope he's a very busy guy, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So we're
Of
hoping to
course.
have that one nailed down before the end of 2025. So you will be the first to know.
Yeah,
And keep up
please.
the phenomenal work yourself, Oliver, because these conversations are so powerful. They really move the needle. People
Yeah.
need more of this.
Absolutely, you know, and thank you for being so open today. I really do appreciate it. Just got a few more things left for you, Ellie, and then we can you can have a lem sip or something. Uh, yeah, I don't want you coughing too much, but yeah, oh God, where should I start now? Do you think? Okay, now I'm going to ask you a question which you've probably been asked 100 million times, but and funny enough, it's the title of your podcast. What's your mission right now?
So my mission is to learn, to grow, and to share, just to become the best version of myself and to share that process with the audience in real time, the highs and the lows, take people on the journey, as cliche as that sound. That is my mission.
Yeah. And keep going with it, man. Keep going. And I think you probably answered this question already, actually. But you know, if you haven't, then we can, you know, we'll just start to see what happens. But out of all the stories that you've heard, you know, I mean, from literally from the birth of the podcast to the part one and now the 2.0 version, I mean, which conversation, you probably answered this already, but what conversation do you think, or conversations have left an indelible mark on you, do you think?
I think we probably covered them.
Yeah,
Yeah, Lorata,
yeah.
Nina, so many of them. So many of my podcast guests have been on the brink. Another one of my earlier interviews, another friend of mine, chap called Paul Moore, literally stood on top of a cliff, about to fling himself off.
Wow.
Outwardly extremely successful 7-figure business owner, lived abroad, house in Marbs, and
Wow.
felt completely empty, addiction issues, was living what he himself describes as a very soulless life at the time. And from being on the cusp of making that irreversible decision, how he's not only transformed his own life, but now helping thousands of people to do the same. So many stories like that. They have a huge impact. But also, I like the fun ones as well. Some of the more light-hearted conversations. I like a bit of the gossip, a bit of the scandal. People like Kerry Katona,
Yeah.
great lady. Again, actually, the underlying theme of resilience has came through time and time again. I think she gets massively underestimated. She's a very smart cookie, been bankrupt twice again. She has been screwed over, she has been defrauded, and she has seen the worst of humanity and keeps bouncing back, bigger, stronger, refuses to give up. She actually said something in one of the podcasts that really stayed with me. And she said, look, you can kick me down, but you can't keep me down. Now, I've repeated that and shared that so many times because, yeah, I can really resonate with that. You can kick me down, and I've been brought to my knees on more than one occasion. But I tell you something, Oliver, you can't fucking keep me down.
Exactly. You can't keep me down. You can't at all. And just you know, your story again, just going back to it very quickly, you know, and I think if there is anyone listening to this who's in there, we've all got our own versions of rock bottom, etc. But you know, if there is anyone listening to this who's in a predicament like that, you know, what would you say to these people?
One step at a time. No matter how futile your situation seems, things will always get better.
Hmm.
I did not know how I was going to feed my children. It all comes down to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, we ultimately need that protection. We need
Yeah,
that
yeah.
roof over our head. We need to be able to provide our families with 3 square meals a day. Now, as a mother, to not be able to do that, that was probably the worst situation that I have. Well, it has undoubtedly been the worst situation that I've ever been in my life. I did not see a way out of that, but there was something deep within me, some sort of inner grit that wouldn't allow me to stop. And during that time, there was no Tony Robbins motivational speeches. I wasn't doing any self development. I wasn't listening to podcasts or audiobooks. It was
Hmm.
very much survival mode. And I think you just need to chunk things down. There was no thoughts of relaunching podcasts or businesses or anything else. It was okay, like, how are we going to get food on the table? And just breaking it down. How do
Mm.
you eat an elephant? One chunk at a time, one step forward. There's times in our lives where we're sprinting, and there's times in our lives when we're crawling. But as long as we don't stop, Oliver, we can slow down, but just never, ever stop,
Mm.
because this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know how or you don't know when, it will pass. You just have to keep a little bit of momentum.
Mm.
You don't need any superficial, cliches or motivational bullshit. Life can really, really test you. But if
Hmm.
you are struggling, then please reach out, speak to a friend, speak to a family member. If you don't have anyone, pick up the phone, ring Samaritans, but just don't stop. Sometimes it's day by day, other times it's hour by hour. There's times in my life where it's been minute by minute. You just have to get through the next minute.
Yeah.
That's all you need to focus on. Just get through the next minute. And eventually that minute will turn into 10 minutes, and that 10 minutes will turn into an hour, and the hour will turn into a day. And
Mm.
eventually you will start to gain traction again. Please take it from somebody who has not known how I'm going to survive the day. It's definitely felt like it would be easier not to be here. And having came through the other side of that now, I just feel very grateful to have got through those times. And I would never want to sugarcoat it, because it's been pretty dark. So if you're in that space that I've been in the past, then please know that this is not your permanent reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that phrase, this too shall pass. And it makes you love the great times as much as you can, and then know that the worst times, that it's coming to an end, and more than anything. And yeah, I love that.
And the other question I ask myself now is, will
Yeah.
this matter in a month?
Yeah. Or 5 years.
So some of the things that I get really stressed about, and like you say, sometimes it will matter in a month. Sometimes you have to go a bit further, but you have to think, will this matter in a year? Will this matter in 5 years? This thing that's so crushing now that feels life ending, will this matter in 5 years
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
Because even, 15, 18 months ago when I was registered as homeless, that just felt so all consuming. I couldn't imagine anything other than the reality that I was facing at that moment. But yet here we are 15 months later, and I'm sat here in this beautiful rental house, and my life's completely different, and
Mm.
I'm having amazing conversations like this, and getting back out and about and meeting the movers and shakers and starting to rebuild this incredible life for myself.
Exactly.
So, you know, um yeah, just
Keep
just
going.
keep going.
Just keep going more than anything. Yeah. It's brilliant. Ellie, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time today, and for being so open and being so honest as well. Honestly, it's been a real privilege, and please forgive my enthusiasm. I know I've been probably hounding your Instagram messaging box for quite a while now, but and it's a joy to be able to say that we've done it now, and we're here. We've had this amazing chat, and just able to meet you, and now that I've made a connection with yourself, and it's been a real privilege. So I've just
Well,
got.
that's it, Oliver. We're friends now. You can't get rid of me.
No. Don't want to get rid of you, mate. But I've got two quick fire questions left. This is the final two questions for every guest. So again, you've probably answered these already, but if another answer comes up, then great. So first of all, I suppose really, what would you say was a bit of advice you wish you heard at the start of your working life?
Ooh, advice I wish I'd heard at the start of my working life.
Yeah,
Don't take life too seriously. I
yeah.
know it's very simple, but I think over the years I've been a very anxious and stressed out person,
Mm,
and it ain't worth it, Oliver. So just don't take life too seriously. Have
exactly.
fun.
Enjoy it. And, just like, I love that phrase of like water off a duck's back. Just let it go. There you go. Easier said than done. And I know it takes a while to get there to that point, but once you're there, freedom is just insane. And I'm just remember actually is that I think it was Cher who said in a interview once, her mum has that saying, if it doesn't matter in 5 years, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. It doesn't matter in 5 years, and it sure as hell doesn't matter right now. So what does it matter? It doesn't. And finally today, what would you say has been an experience or experiences you've had in your life or career that you're never ever going to forget?
God. I think I've mentioned a few of them, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting that phone call, January the 22nd, 2025 was
Yeah.
will be etched in my memory for a long time. So, yeah, it's hard to look beyond that one at the moment, Oliver. I'm sure next time we have this chat, maybe when we do a follow-up interview,
Absolutely.
I'll have a different answer for you. But at the moment, that's definitely been the the catalyst for so much change, and
Yeah.
one of the most impactful moments of my entire life, should we say.
Yeah. And from this, I mean, that is it the phoenix saying like from the fire, from the ashes comes the rebirth or something. I've paraphrased that heavily, but excuse me. But yeah, from I've got the frog now. But yeah, it's like from the bottom we can rebuild. There's only one way to go when you're there, and it's to go back up. So
Absolutely. And it's
yeah,
actually quite liberating as well. It is. Um, but on that note, I'm going to have to make a dash for it because
yeah, of course, man, go.
I've got three children waiting at the school gates for mummy.
Okay,
Navigating life as an entrepreneur, a podcaster, and also a single parent.
absolutely,
Um,
man. Yeah.
the,
No,
the, the
okay. Well, no,
choices.
I'll let you get off. But just before you go, I just want to say thank you very much, Ellie. This has been a really great talk to have, and it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. And I love your stuff. I love your podcast, and keep up the great work, man. You're awesome. And
Oh, as are you, Oliver. Make sure you do keep in touch. You're definitely a man on
absolutely.
the mission, and thank you for having me.
No, thank you, Ellie. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, if you just hang on, I'll finish the recording, then you can dash off to your kids and stuff. But the last thing to say is, guys, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic podcast. I'll be back very soon. And Ellie, thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.